Welcome to In the Cut, the show that gets you up close and personal with BN and our community.
Welcome to In the Cut, the show that gets you up close and personal with Black non-believers and our community. My name is Edith Gray, aka Lilith, No God, No King, and I am your host for the show today. In the Cut is a production of Black Non-Believers, a 501c3 organization headquartered in the Atlanta area. We connect with other Blacks and allies who are living free of religion and might otherwise be shunned by family and friends by providing a caring, friendly, and informative community. Instead of accepting dogma, we determine truth and morality through reason and evidence. The mission of Black Non-Believers is to provide secular fellowship. We nurture and support non-believers in coming out. We encourage pride in non-religious identities. We educate the public on the history and the current state of non-belief in the Black community. We organize events and charitable causes. You can find us at BlackNonbelievers.org. BN welcomes all, regardless of your age, gender identity, sexual identity, national origin, or racial identity. However, our content and our work prioritizes Black non-religious voices. And so we want to just start off the show by kind of reviewing some of the things that have been happening with our organization lately. Myself, I participated in a podcast that will be on iHeartRadio. We're still waiting for the episode to drop. And Mandisa's episode on Jubilee's show called Middle Ground came out on Sunday, Easter Sunday. And it was great. It was a wonderful show, and Mandisa did awesome. So, hey, Mandisa, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Edith. Welcome, everyone, to today's show. And let me just say that I had the opportunity to watch Edith at the recording of Across Generations, and she did such a phenomenal job. I cannot wait until this comes out. I can't wait until I show the video clips. You did so fun. You were so phenomenal. And we're going to share the link to the Middle Ground episode in the chat so that you can watch later. I appreciate Jubilee for reaching out to us to find participants, and then also for having me out to film that episode. It was a long, grueling weekend, but I tell you, it was great. And the video is actually up to almost 500,000 views. And so we, again, appreciate everyone who watched the clips on Instagram, TikTok, and who also watched the video. And the one thing I want to say about representation is that it is really important for helping people to understand our position, the fact that there are more of us in the Black community, and the fact that there are up and coming activists and content creators, authors, and everything that are coming from our community. And this is very, very important to the work that we do here at Black Non-Believers. And which is why I'm really excited for our guest today, and also to have Edith on the show, especially as a host, because to be able to eloquently articulate our voices and perspectives, especially in the public, when we are engaging those who are still religious, this is what we've been doing for the past 13 years. And I'm really, really glad that we've been able to reach so many people. And to give others the opportunity to speak on. Shout out to Kelly for sharing the link to Middle Ground in the chat. If you haven't watched it yet, or if you want to watch it again, please do. So yes, thank you so much, Edith, for stepping up and being on Across Generations. And it is just so important for those who are. And I want to say that Darius, who was the other atheist, official atheist on Middle Ground, He said it. He was he's the son of a pastor. He was studying to be a pastor, and he had not told anyone in his family at the time. So that was his coming out.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
That'll be.
what a
That is, yeah, that's where I'm at too. I kind of, I took a couple of quick TikToks of my own just to kind of like give a little teaser for on my own personal social media pages, and I'll be interested to see how people react because yes, I haven't really come out to everybody yet either, but yeah. So no, so what was I going to say? Yeah, across
he
generations. That was my first time kind of in the public eye at such a level, and so, but it really it was great. So
Edith,
I
you're
hope.
gonna have to shake them folks off with a stick after this after this
Okay, well,
appearance.
okay.
Of
To be
course, the
honest, yeah,
producers, yes,
yeah,
the
the TikTok
producers
is
were
starting to
like,
look
"Oh
like a
my
thirst trap.
gosh."
It's starting to look like a thirst trap in there on TikTok. I don't
That
know
is
what to do.
hilarious. No, it's not. It is too funny, but no, it's gonna be great. They gonna be, what did one of the producers say at Across Generations? She was like, "Does everyone in your group have to be good looking?" I'm like, "No," but it was just too funny.
No, we just
She was
we
like,
just want
"Yeah,
we want we want honesty. We want people who are interested in facts and
yeah."
reason, and you can look any kind of way you want.
Yeah, and if
So
we make it look good in the process, then hey, we can't be mad at it. I mean, that's what's up. This is what we
at
do.
all, not
This
at
is
all.
this is what we do. And so I think that it's going to go over very, very well. We've been looking at the comments on the Middle Ground episode. They've been very interesting. The folks over there warned us that there would be trolls, and there have been. I just look at those and laugh, but no, it's been it's been we've gotten some really, really great responses from the episode. A lot of people enjoyed it, and again, it was a pleasure to be on it. And I am looking forward to when Across Generations airs as well. I'm really excited about it. And for those of you who are in Chicago today, right after In the Cut, the Chi-Town affiliate and myself will be where I'm currently at the Bessie Coleman Library branch on the South Side, where we will be doing a in-person viewing of Middle Ground and discussion. We will have being merch for sale, and as you can see, I'm wearing one of our white slogan shirts with walking by sight, not faith. So. Yeah, come on out. There'll be refreshments there. You'll get to meet Cynthia, who you've seen on the nonprofits before, and also on the Skeptic Haven channel, Women Atheists Unload. We do a lot of work with them, and so Edith, be on the lookout for more appearances,
All
on
right,
different platforms as well. So
all
yeah,
right.
yeah. So I'm really, really excited about what we have been doing. We welcome two new board members, Chris Cameron and Derek Colanduno. Chris Cameron is the author of Black Freethinkers, for those who didn't know. And Derek is the director of the Skep Track at DragonCon, which takes place every year, Labor Day weekend. It's a huge fandom convention, and there is a Skep Track that is dedicated to everything atheist, humanist, skeptic, and free thought related. So keep that event in mind. We will be there representing as an organization. We'll be tabling there. We usually speak there as well. So please please visit the website to learn more about what we're doing, and of course to support the work. So I'm going to give it back to you, Edith, because we
All
are
right,
going to welcome our special guest, who again I'm once again very excited about. We love all of our guests on the show, but definitely excited today.
all right. So it is now our pleasure to welcome our special guest, Darante LaMar. Darante LaMar's journey from serving as a leader in both charismatic megachurches and hyper spiritual storefront churches to embracing a life of secularism and reason offers a unique perspective on the evolution of faith in contemporary society. Now, he had a background that includes virtually every role within the ministry. Darante brings a comprehensive understanding of the inner workings of religious organizations and the impact they have on individuals and communities. Currently, Darante is a global project manager and DI executive in the healthcare industry. He serves alongside his wife as the managing partner of DLDD World Group, a nonprofit committed to people-centric projects, programs, and progress. Darante is the author of 3 published books, Significant, Parenting on Purpose, and Memphis, The Last Supper, and 3 upcoming books, Making the Jump, Christ Held Up, and The Case for Religion. Sound really interesting. So we want to welcome to the show, Darante. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Quick thing. It was so funny because I was all smiles before I was going to come on, and then you started reading the information, and I felt like I was back at church again. So I had to put my head down and look like I was being serious while I was being welcomed up to the stage. It was.
No, that's fine. Well, we're really glad to have you on the show, and yeah, that's not so much a churchy thing, I think,
Yep.
as it is just getting ready to be on stage. You
Yeah.
gotta, you gotta do a little
Yep.
head fake and whatnot. But so Darante, the thing that we usually ask our guests is we want to understand, and we got a little bit in the intro, but if you could tell our viewers a little bit about your religious journey.
Sure. My journey is somewhat of a roller coaster, right? So, as a young child, as I've stated on other interviews, I kind of grew up with a mother who was impacted by the crack epidemic and a father who wasn't there. So, at early ages, I didn't have any reason to believe in God. I kind of felt like it was just something that old folks did to comfort themselves. But around 11 and 12 years old, I had an experience with a Pentecostal church. And I noticed in their churches, God was allegedly active. And so I piqued my curiosity. And so I got saved around that time and got very active in ministry. Within the next year, I was building Christian campus ministries on campus, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. By the time I was in 11th grade, I was a youth pastor and a worship minister at a considerably large church. And then by the time I'd graduated high school, I was on my way to pastor. And I did. Pastored for about a decade. However, throughout the entire experience of that for me, it was, I often say today, torturous because one of the things that I was really trying to do as a Christian was get to the truth. And I really wanted to know God. I really wanted to experience God. I really wanted to believe in God. But because of my early childhood experiences, I always had this kind of cave of skepticism reserved in my mind, where I was willing to participate, but only to, but I would only suspend my disbelief to a degree. So I'd shout and have a good time with the best of them. Actually, I wouldn't shout. I didn't like the huckabuck very much, but I'd clap and I'd praise God and I'd worship and I'd lay hands and I was a healing type of guy for a moment. I just didn't claim to be doing the healings myself. But it ended up being somewhat torturous for me mentally, because I'd leave a lot of services like that wondering like, okay, what exactly happened here? For example, I remember one particular time where 2 young boys had come up in my prayer line and, said their arms were broken, fell out of tree. I don't know. And I prayed for them, and then they took the cast off and everybody rejoiced, and it was a wonderful time. But I remember when I got back home, sitting in my room, wondering, like, thinking about all the things I didn't know about that moment, thinking about, well, I actually don't know if their arms were broken or just fractured. I don't know how long they've had the cast on. I don't know when they were due to take the cast off. But yet in this moment, everybody is convinced that, this is actually something that has happened. And God has done it. And I felt really bad because I was sitting at home and I'm like, even though I was the vessel or instrument of this, I wasn't convinced that a miracle had taken place. And I share that story to kind of frame my whole experience with Christianity. Even though I was participating, I was always the skeptic. I just didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And then I remember my later years, it began to get harder and harder to kind of wrestle with. Somebody asked me, was it the absence of God that shook you out of your religion? And I said, no, it wasn't the absence of God. It was the pretending of people. Because there were certain events that I knew, okay, like nothing's really happening here, but I saw how far people were willing to go to pretend, to uphold their beliefs, and that wasn't something that I was really willing to do. And so, after pastoring for 10 years, I decided that, you know what, I think I've been an atheist this whole time, and that was a literal conversation I'd had with myself. Is that, I tried, I gave it my best shot. I believed I believed in every way that I could believe. I cried out to the Lord several nights. I prayed, I fasted, and I fasted, didn't help, didn't lose any weight. But I fasted. I did all of these things. I was serious. I gave everything that I had. I stood in giving lines because I was a part of the mega church fiasco. So I stood in giving lines and wrote checks as high as $3,500 out of faith. I gave to the poor. I did all of these things. And even through doing all of this, I had still not felt this presence of God. What other people described as the presence of God, I could understand as both psychological and sociological phenomenon. And I try to engage those conversations with other preachers and pastors, and to my chagrin, found out that many of them were not interested, which was, I think, kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Was one of the things that one of the deals that I'd kind of made when I first got saved was that eventually I'd find somebody who had studied this thing through and through, who could answer some of the tough questions that I had. So I got saved in a little Pentecostal church, and they couldn't answer those tough questions. But I just assumed, well, they're not very educated. Their relationship with God is just experiential, so maybe they're just not the ones who know. And so then I got involved with the Word of Faith Church, and surely these people wear suits, so they're educated, right? And so I thought they would know, and then didn't happen there either. And so I kept finding mentors and hoping that one day I'd find somebody who could talk me through this process of canonization. How exactly did we get this book? And what reason do I have to trust that the people who oversaw this process, what reason do I have to believe that they were actually trustworthy, or that they had any insight into the world, any more than I have or anybody else has, right? And sadly, that day never came. And that was like eye-opening for me, because it was no longer just some pastor of a 50-member church. These were pastors of thousands at this time. And I'm thinking, like, wait a minute. How did you convince yourself that this was truth enough that you were willing to go out and tell others that it's the truth, and to tell them that if they don't subscribe to your version of this truth, that they are in risk of eternal judgment? You have staked your eternal soul, whatever that is, on this idea, this belief system, and you haven't done any research on it. At that moment, I decided to get up from the children's table, and I've been an atheist ever since. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Okay. Yeah, that's so about what point did you have that final conversation and, quote, leave the kids' table?
That was 2014 for me, and it was there were several things that were going on socially. Trayvon Martin had recently been murdered, and Mike Brown had been recently been murdered. And at that moment, I was paying close attention to the response of the church. And I was very disappointed with a lot of the response, because a lot of it, just from my context, I can't speak for everybody, but for the pastors that I was rolling with and the ones that I knew very well, I saw very clearly that it was just an opportunity to commercialize something to get more members, But
Mm-hmm.
not many of these pastors, if any, were actually trying to go to a table and talk about what can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore in our communities. There was no interest in a long-term conversation. There were no interest in community solutions. There was interest in, let me put on a hoodie and hold up a soda and some Skittles and show that I'm down for the cause so that more people would identify with my church. And that was something at that moment, it's kind of like, oh, snap, I'm just sitting at the table with the people who just want to be popular. And that's never who I wanted to be in life. I don't want to be popular for popularity's sake. I actually want to be doing something with my life. And I realized, like, oh, I'm an entertainer at this moment. I am a glorified entertainer.
Oh, an entertainer. Yeah. But I know we've got more questions, but I just wanted to back up and talk about how, in hearing you speak about being a leader of people, you recognized the power that you had, and you were trying to be responsible about it.
Yes.
And that's something, like you say, I see a lot of people out here saying this, that, and whatever, and a third, and not really even taking responsibility for how that lands on people. That is a problem. One of the problems I see with organized religion.
Yep.
Is this, they're really not responsible at the end of the day. So,
Well, interestingly enough, that's the thing. Even before I completely deconverted, I used to be a healing preacher, and I stopped being a healing preacher because I started thinking about how people who were coming believing that God was going to heal them and had serious conditions and were leaving without healing. And I realized, like, nobody's thinking about what kind of damage that's doing to those people. That they're walking away believing either, that this God who you told me is the most important thing in my life does not love me, or that I am not worthy of this miracle that you think exists. So once I realized that, I was like, oh, I can't do that anymore.
No,
That's horrible.
doing that. Yeah, and the point you made about the religious people in your community response to police violence on Black bodies.
Yes.
Why were they not, going to their community leaders, their political leaders, speaking up to politicians who could actually, implement some changes? But yeah, we can get into that later. Very good responses there. So what was the most challenging aspect of your deconversion from religion?
Figuring out who I was going to be afterwards, or figuring out how much of me was religion and how much of me was me. I think that the hard part about, for me, being a Christian was I lost my identity in it, or at least I thought I did, because it was no longer I who lived, but Christ who lived in me. And it was this type of thing where I had lived, nearly 2 decades of my life following this voice that I identified as something other than myself. And so when so I'm just following the Lord, or I'm following the Holy Spirit, and so when I deconvert from that, it's like, okay, so how much of that is me? And like, who the hell am I now? Because my whole life I've just been a pastor. And that's the only thing that I thought I wanted to be, or it's the only thing that I felt I had permission to be, or it's the only thing I felt that I was capable of being. It was a storm of realizations of how it was all me at the end of the day, and that all of these things were a part of me, and I had used all of these things in my own ways, in some ways to empower certain things within me, and then other ways to keep me from having to try new things or to adventure in new worlds. So what I realized is that it was me. It was just me in prison. It was me in this prison that I had created for myself, that religion made very comfortable for me. And so on the other side, it was just like, okay, so I'm going to start living now, and living like I know who I am, and no longer being afraid to express my thoughts, and kind of release myself from the pressure of always having to be right. I now have the freedom to be wrong. And because I know if I'm wrong, and if I find out I'm wrong tomorrow, I'll update that information. I have the freedom to update as I go, and that feels really good. So, but the hardest part was definitely coming to terms with, okay, so who the hell am I now? Okay, what do I do from here?
Yeah, and I think that holds a lot of people in religion, because they are afraid to look at that and go, well, it's going to be, because it is such a part of so many of our identities,
Yes.
and that it's going to be very frightening. And some people just want to stay in their comfort zone.
Oh yeah.
Rather than test, reach out there in the dark kind of and find something new. So
yeah.
But yeah, that I have similar I won't call it deconversion, but similar experiences, and I came out around the same time you did. But
oh wow,
yeah, and that whole identity crisis, I was going through that anyway, because I was about middle age at the time.
Yeah.
And all I had been at that point in my life was somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's mother,
yes,
somebody's wife.
Wow.
I had been all of those things, and I was like, well, when do I get a chance to be me?
Yeah. Yep.
And so another question. Are there more Black pastors who are secretly deconverting? And if so, why is it so hard for them to come out?
Ooh, all right. So I think this one, I have a lot of thoughts on this, because when I was going through my deconversion, were quite a few pastors who reached out at the time just because they had hints that, okay, Darante's thinking a little differently. And many of them kind of shared the same story. And that story was, oh, I've been where you are, which I took offense to, because none of them knew where I was. None of them had asked me any questions. None of them had actually asked me where I stood. They just made this assumption. And I'd say it had to be more than a dozen pastors who had that type of conversation with me. No, I've been where you are. It's just a phase, and blah, blah, blah. So what I realized from that is that actually most Black pastors have come to wrestle with their own skepticism and their lack of belief. I've jokingly said with some of I can't even say joke. I say joke because I'm saying it to y'all, but to them, I was serious. I've said to them, you don't believe in hell. You don't believe this. There's no way you believe this, because if you believe this, you would not be doing the things that you actually, say, that you're actually doing. But the truth of the matter is, yes, there are a lot of Black pastors who they are so far removed from these beliefs. And this is a phenomenon that I do ask people to pay attention to, is that pastors are just as much prisoners to this belief as their parishioners are. A pastor could want to say, hey, I don't believe this anymore, and I want to go tell my church, the truth, and I want to start teaching them truth. And many of them do. If they do that, they might as well have just quit pastoring, because their members are going to say, well, you're not a man of God anymore. You're not anointed anymore. You're the devil. You're the devil worshiper. So it is a mutual relationship. There's a better way to talk about that, but it is definitely a mutual dependency where they're dependent on each other. And so when you are a pastor, for the most part, it's not something that you just wake up one day when you're 30 or 40 or 50 and decide to do. Some people, that is their track, but by far and large, for Black pastors, you've wanted to do that since you were a child. That's typically how you get groomed in it to be effective, at least. Someone's seen you since you were 16, 18, whatever, 21. And you either have a relative that's a minister that's also in ministry, or you have a close mentor that's also in ministry. And so you get groomed up in this thing, and it's no different than like becoming a lawyer, except for the ethics and the standards and the qualifications. But that's a whole nother story. But it's no different in becoming a lawyer. So you imagine you go spend 8 to 10 years of your life preparing to be this thing, and then 10 to 12 years of your life, serving in this thing, and then come to the place where you don't believe. There are two big problems that keep Black pastors stuck, and that is finances and sociality. So if I've actually done well in ministry and built a nice little congregation, and I actually have a salary, and this is what I do. And then I decide that I'm no longer this anymore. What does the world look like for me after that? Where do I work? Who hires me? Who looks at my resume and say, oh, you was a preacher for 20 years? Yeah, you're going to be a good VP at this company. So that's frightening. What do I do now? Especially if you've not developed any other skills, if you don't know how to identify your translatable skills from ministry, and the more superstitious your ministry was, the less translatable skills you're actually going to have. And so these are real problems. But then the other problem is the other thing that contributes to my finances is not just the people that I pastor, it's the network that I've built. It's the social environment that I have, the people who look at me and think I'm a good person, the people who look at me and trust the things that I say. The moment I say I no longer believe these things, all of those people go away. That whole network goes away, or at least that's what it looks like to most pastors. And then I'm out here by myself. Most Black pastors are married. They have children. They are connected to intergenerational households, which means that they're, parents and grandparents are typically involved in the situation. And so making such a decision seems to be a betrayal against every fiber of your social existence. And so it becomes easier, wiser even, to suffer in silence for the sake of your sanity and for the sake of your social and financial security.
I'd like to jump in and ask Darante that, you are, as they say, cooking right now, right? So what gave you the strength to, I guess, just say all of that doesn't matter, because there have been pastors who have come
Yeah.
out and have lost everything and had to rebuild. So what was it that, I mean, and I know you've talked about your journey, but what was it that gave you the strength to overcome all of that, which many other Black pastors have to face? And we know they do have to face it, but yes, what was it that gave you that strength?
Ooh, that is a great question. So there were two things, kind of two phases. So when I first deconverted, the first thing I decided to do was to step down from pastor. I did not tell anybody I was an atheist at the time, but I did tell them that I no longer felt qualified to be a pastor. The only person that I told that I no longer believed at that time was my mentor. Who I'll say his name, Pastor Mike McClure Jr. So told him, I said, hey, I don't really believe this anymore. But, so I decided to kind of keep it on the hush. But that decision not to pastor after deconverting was based on just wanting to be integral. If I don't believe this, I don't want to lead other people in believing this. And part of me coming to that place was realizing that it's not just that these beliefs aren't true, they're not healthy. That was my conclusion. These are not healthy beliefs. And so I do not want to continue to contribute to something that is not healthy for my community. But I still didn't want to be offensive, right? So I decided to try to live kind of like on the fence. Like if anybody asked me, I would tell them. But for the most part, I would try to live in a way that people could say, oh, Darante might still be a Christian. I would even play word games with people when people would ask me if you're a believer still. I'd be like, oh, well, was Jesus actually a Christian? I'd do things like that because I didn't want to even get in that conversation. And so I did that for 10 years. For 10 years, I tried to exist as a silent atheist, as someone that would just have those conversations with people who were willing, but for the most part, not do anything. During that time, I watched my community. I watched my family, I watched my friends, I watched my cousins. I watched how this belief system continues to rob them of responsibility and accountability in their own lives. That was major for me. And so even then, within those 10 years, I tried to figure out ways to experiment. Like, how can I still help people without saying I'm an atheist, but also help them see that these things are not necessarily helpful. And I couldn't really find a way. And then there was this other thing of experiencing where family members who knew that I no longer shared these beliefs, anytime they were in my presence, they'd want to force me to pray. And it was just like, okay, we're getting ready to eat. Come on, Darante, you're gonna say the prayer. And I'm like, okay, now y'all know I don't believe in any of this anymore. And so then I remember it was actually end of last year, and I was sitting down with my wife, and I said, you know what? I can't live like this anymore. And I said, there's a few things here. I can't live like the things that I want to say are wrong if I know that I have reason to think these things. And I said, I was a preacher long before I was a Christian. Before I was ever a believer. You ever ask any of the friends I grew up with? They were like, oh yeah, Darante preaching all the time. He always trying to tell us what to do. I was a preacher long before I was a Christian. And so Christianity didn't give me preaching, and so it couldn't take it away. And so that entire 10 years, it was like living with fire shut up in my bones, wanting to say so much, which is why people are like, how did you get all of this content out so fast? Because I've been sitting on it for 10 years, trying not to make other people feel uncomfortable at my existence. And then I realized that I was literally living my own injustice at that moment. I was condemning myself to be silent. I was doing to myself the same thing that I've seen my community do to the LGBTQ plus community. And I felt the sting of that. And it was like a double-edged sword. On one side, I feel the sting of it. And on the other side, I feel the need to speak out. And on both sides, I felt suppressed. And I have been the author of my own suppression. So I felt, in a sense, that I was still going through my deconversion, even though that I had deconverted, because I felt that I owed people's delusions something. And 2023, that broke for me. And like, I no longer owe your delusion. And if anything, I owe you health. And so that's what I'm gonna keep dishing out for as long as I can. So that's what it was that kind of shook me there.
Nice. Yeah, that yeah, I think a common thing that people say is don't make yourself small to make others feel comfortable. And you were shrinking yourself down into a little corner of life.
Yep.
Just to spare the wrong feelings or the wrong thoughts of others. So we're glad that you decided that was enough, and we're moving on. We're moving up, on and out.
Yes.
Oh man. So that deconversion story, that deconversion for Black pastors is basically, I would say, it's like people who are not in a position of leadership.
Yeah.
They don't have those same pressures. And so it's kind of like if I were not a preacher or a pastor in some position of leadership, that conversion and that coming out is hard. So it's when you're someone who is in the clergy, it's like that experience magnified by 100.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So that took a lot of strength and courage. But so since 2023, you said?
Yes.
So, and you immediately came out and you were like, I got content backed up. And so now that you are a content creator, you're actively speaking in public. What are some of the goals for your work? I think you kind of alluded to it, but put a few details in there for us.
Absolutely. I'm still obsessed with community. That's the one thing I miss about church is community, or I'll say the illusion of community. Because the hard thing about church was that it promised community, it had the image of community, but when you have these superstitious attachments that you're using to dictate how you relate to other people, it actually robs you of genuine community. And so I know right now the church kind of has that market cornered. And so I would like to be a part of changing that. I would like to play a very critical part in creating community and spaces for non-believers, and with that same with that same competitive edge, if I can say, just because I think what people don't understand about the megachurch phenomenon is that the things that make the megachurch successful has nothing to do with its theology, none whatsoever. The biggest difference between the megachurch and the traditional church is that the megachurch started paying attention to what works for people. That's all they did. They started paying attention. Oh, well, people don't like these old sad songs anymore. People don't like the church looking like a funeral parlor anymore. People actually like screens when they go to places. Yeah. People actually want a full band. And maybe this time when we do the music, let's not put people up there who can't sing. Those are the type of decisions megachurches started making that led them to become the type of churches that they are. They started thinking, hey, well, when people come to our churches, how can they engage if their children are crying and are not interested? So let's create experiences for their children as well. They started doing, things like this, and that's what started leading to this massive growth rate and success structure for them. But of course, because of the theology, it doesn't quite work well. But I want to create things. I want to create space that for those people who are on the fence and who are thinking like, maybe this isn't for me anymore, I want to create safe space for them to where they can go and deconvert, deconstruct. But I also want to create space for people to explore, to continue this conversation. I absolutely find our former religious affiliations fascinating. I find them when we're attached to them now sad, disappointing even. But there's so much that we've lived through as a human species, and there's so much more that we can be capable of. And what's interesting is that the church has almost accidentally stumbled upon one of the most powerful social experiment engines that I've ever seen in the world. Without psychedelics, people can convince themselves of all types of things that are happening. Without medication, people can be feeling sad and then all of a sudden feel better after a service. And you get convinced that these things are happening because of something supernatural, or because of God, or because of an angel, or because of your dead Aunt Lulu, or whatever. And at the end of the day, these are actually fascinating natural phenomenon. That there are things that happen when we sing together, which is why, again, major shout out to the Godless Gospel and what you guys are doing there, because these things are deeper than just what we believe about, some woo-woo world. It's about what we believe about ourselves. We have an impact on each other. When we sing together, we feel better. When we do things together, we feel better. When we share our stories together, we feel better, we learn, and we grow. And I don't believe that the church should have a monopoly on that.
Awesome. So if I may put you on the spot for a moment, Darante,
Yes.
tell our viewers how connecting with Black non-believers, and what was it like seeing that there were other Black atheists out there? If you could tell our viewers about how that impacted your journey, and how you have been more, how that inspired
Yes.
you more to
Yes.
get, to get to where you are.
Okay, beautiful. The simplest way I can say it, it gave me permission, right? Sure, there was Matt Dillahunty, there was Sam Harris, there was Richard Dawkins, there was all of this out there, right? But seeing Black atheists, young atheists who did not look like whatever other people thought they should look like, that was absolutely profound for me. It was permissive for me. Man, because if you're Black, you already know it's almost like you don't have permission to be an atheist. The moment you decide to be an atheist, people begin to ask, who gave you the right to be an atheist? It is so socially unacceptable, that, I actually advise everyone go through it. So then you actually begin to identify with what other people experience. Being a Black atheist, I immediately begin to feel like what other people mean when they say, like, I feel like I don't even have a right to exist. I don't have a right to be here. So seeing Black Nonbelievers, seeing Mandisa's work, seeing Dr. Penn being interviewed on Black Nonbelievers, who was a former Methodist pastor, and I knew something about Methodists. They're like really strict, and they approach it academically. And so seeing her interviewing Dr. Penn, and I'm like, oh, these are two Black people, and one of them was a pastor. Yikes! This gives me liberty. I can breathe. I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy. For a long time, and I'll end it here. For a long time, and I used to tell my wife this, I honestly thought that I was going crazy, that I was having a beautiful mind experience, and that everything I wrote was actually scribble scrabble, and everybody was just being nice and being like, oh, yeah, that's cute. And when I saw Black Nonbelievers and I saw these conversations being hosted, it was just like, okay, I can breathe. I can finally start treating myself like I'm not crazy. And like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. I'm just not a part of the majority anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah, that really was a relief. And it is that sense of relief that I'm not the only one, that there is a community. And I think it's awesome. And I love that we are steadily moving forward and creating these communities. And
Yes.
yeah, I don't believe that the church should have the monopoly on fellowship. Something you were mentioning about singing together.
Yeah.
I don't think it is supernatural. Now, I'm not a physiologist. I'm not a doctor, but just breathing in and breathing out does things to your bloodstream, does things to your blood cells.
Yes.
You can get, like for people who exercise, they know that they get a feeling of euphoria from that circulation, that intensified circulation. So it is not something supernatural. It is a physical, natural thing that occurs. So thanks for bringing that point. Gosh, I had some other things I wanted to say, but they've slipped my mind now.
And let me just say, Larante, thank you so much, Edith, for conducting such a great interview of Darante. And I just want to say that I definitely look forward to us all working together more, because it really does take, and we were talking before the show started, that it takes more than one voice, it takes more than one action, and whatever we can do to collaborate and make, especially our demographic, stronger, is really, really going to make a huge difference. Because yes, in us creating these spaces for Black non-religious folks and those who are questioning in favor of leaving, and it is work that we're gonna have to we have to roll up our sleeves, and we need for people to support it. So just, all of us, I look forward to us definitely working together more on this, because again, it like they say, it takes a village. It definitely takes a team. So yes.
Yeah, and I just want to add, it's not quite on what Mandisa was saying, but it is when I start to discuss religion, and my focus is more about Christianity, because that's where I came out of. And I just want to say, I saw some of your YouTube videos where you were going through the scriptures and looking at the Bible verse. The other night about the child sacrifice.
Oh, yes.
And I, in my podcast that I did a couple of weeks ago, I kind of down that road about, if the guy down the street treated his son like that, you have DCS over there, you have the cops over there, and he's doing it literally for clout. Is he not?
Oh my goodness! So, like it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
It is. But no, that was just a little comment I wanted to make. But Mandisa, if you don't have any more questions, there's
no, we're good. Thank you once again, Darante, for being a guest on In the Cut. We definitely want to have you back on, and we will
Yes.
definitely talk more about collaborating and having you, as a speaker with BN. So yes, please be on the lookout for that, folks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank
So
you all
thank
for having me. This was absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being our guest today. You can follow Darante everywhere on social media. He's on YouTube. He has a Facebook page, Darante.Martin. He's on Twitter at DaranteRx. And he's on TikTok at Darante LaMar 7. And he has his business website is dldd.us. So we encourage you to reach out to him through the socials, and we will inform him, I'm sure, in the future. So thank you so much. And so thank you. That was a great interview. But we want to talk about some upcoming events, as we normally do at this time. Today, Mandisa already mentioned that that she's in Chicago. There's going to be a middle ground viewing discussion at 2 p.m. So she's already in place for that. So if you're in the Chicago area, hopefully you can join. On April 11th, we hope that you join Can We Talk workshop series presented by Black Nonbelievers and Compassion and Choices. That is online, 7 p.m. through Zoom. It's free to attend, but you must register at Can We Talk Part 1. And then on April 20th, middle ground in-person discussion featuring Mandisa Thomas. It's going to be 4 p.m. Eastern at Ponce City Market on the second floor. And you can sign up at Meetup, Black Nonbelievers. And then we want to remind you again that BNCCon is back for 2024 from November 29th through December 5th. You can join us on Royal Caribbean's Independence of the Seas. We're in Haiti and Falmouth, Jamaica, near Montego Bay. Our featured speakers will include Chris Cameron, Candace Gorham, Dragnock Mims, Christy Puckett, Teddy Reeves, and more. Prices start at just $600 per person. That'll be a double occupancy, and it includes cabin fare, taxes, port fees, multiple dining options, and convenience. So we hope you will join us. Secure your slot today at bnccon.com, bn-seacon-2024. And we're still seeking new board members. If you're enthusiastic and dedicated and like to have fun while working, please apply at BN Board Member. And the Godless Gospel Project, we're short on tenors right now. So if you got some pipes and some chops, we want you to come out. It is a paid opportunity. So go ahead and subscribe to godlessgospel.org. And always will keep posted on social media on upcoming shows. And we'd love for you to check out the We Are My Dream Etsy shop and purchase your favorite crochet items. There are custom pieces available at We Are My Dream, Etsy.com. And finally, if you are looking for a great gift to give at any time of the year, pick up a copy of Name Dropping. It's created by our previous In the Cut guest and one of our new board members, Deanna Williams and Jesus Reyna. Name Dropping is a frustratingly fun game that it's about movie trivia, and it's a card game. So if you click on the link in the chat, you can purchase that today at https://namedroppinggame.com. And that's pretty much wrapped. We enjoyed the show today. And once again, as a reminder, we air every first Saturday each month. So please don't forget to like the video and spread the word. And you can follow us on Facebook at Black Nonbelievers. We're on Instagram at BN Believers Inc. and Twitter X at B Non-Believers. The B and the N are capitalized. Also subscribe to us on the YouTube, BlackNonbelievers Inc. And once again, we are getting closer to monetizing our channel, so we thank you all and supporting us. Find your local BN affiliate on Meetup or join all of them. We're looking for new organizers, so be sure to complete the volunteer form on our website. And to learn more and make your tax-deductible donation at BlackNonbelievers.org/donate. And if you want to even more, you can get your swag. That's right, Mandy, show it off. You can get our t-shirts, at BlackNonbelievers.org /store-2. Thank you, Lisa. I hope you have a great time today in Chicago, and we will see you all next time.
Bye-bye, y'all.